Caribbean islands are known for producing giants in their field, individuals who emerge from these tiny islands to make significant contributions on the world stage. They include Nobel laureates, poets, writers, musicians, and statesmen. The lovely island of St. Vincent is no exception. It is the home of Dr. Cecil Cyrus, an icon in Caribbean medicine.
Cecil is one of those multi-talented Renaissance men who's excellent at everything to which he turns his hand. He's a wonderful gardener, he's a great communicator, he's a great photographer as well as a great doctor.
I have to say he's an excellent surgeon. He is very well. Not very few of him we can find these days.
He was made a few years ago a PAHO hero in health for St. Vincent.
But I always say give God thanks and praise to Dr. Cyrus. I think he did an extra work to have me where I am here today. So I owe him those respect and those love. I'll never forget him.
Dr. Cyrus could have worked anywhere in the world that he wanted, and he chose to come back to St. Vincent and dedicate years of his expertise to this island at the stage when the medical services here were terrible, and his contribution was just invaluable.
Dr. Cyrus recalls why he decided to follow a career in medicine.
In the 1930s, the doctor used to come to Layu at 11 o'clock in his lovely white sports car, and he would go to the rectory, as we called it, the place where he attended, and he charged those who could afford to pay a shilling. He saw them, and when he had seen those persons who paid the shilling, exactly at 12 o'clock he left us. And we were the majority who needed the medical help. And he left us to the nurse who did her best for us. And as a little boy of 7 years old, it hurt my tender heart so badly that I decided I'd like to become a doctor. Layu is a little town on the western side of the island. And it's about 8 miles from Kingstown. And I was born there on the 6th of January 1929. It's a small population, less than 1,000 persons, and life was so much different from it is today. We were a civic-minded group. Everybody looked after everybody as his child. And the important male figure was a policeman because he was always there. The other men were in the mountains or on the sea or elsewhere. But life was happily simple.
From primary school in Layu, Cecil went on to secondary school in Kingstown and then became a teacher at the same school. He still dreamed of a medical education, but it seemed a financial impossibility.
Well, my salary was $113 a month. And my father and I had this tremendous inspiration one Wednesday night, simultaneously as we sat having supper. And that if he added $87 to my $113, that would give us $200. We saved that for 24 months at $4,800, exactly 1,000 pounds. And that would give us enough for the first 3 years. The Queen's University of Belfast was not my choice. I applied for university admission, and the Colonial Office in London decided to look around for me, and they got me to the Queen's University of Belfast. And I think it was one of the loveliest things that ever happened. Because there we were treated as individuals, as entities, not in a place like London where you felt like a piece of scrap iron and a heap of scrap iron. Nobody had warned us about how cold it would be. And I went there with West Indian shoes and socks. I had to put on 4 pairs of socks, and so my shoes couldn't fit. And I had to sell my shoes and buy a proper suit. There was a time, Northern Ireland is a very damp place. And there was a time when one Saturday I had on 9 layers of clothing, including 4 pairs of socks. 59 I became an apprenticed young surgeon, and for 2 years I had the great fortune to work with wonderful surgeons, about 11 different surgeons. Well, I started my job at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning in June 1961. I went to the first ward round, and I didn't hear a word of what the consultant was saying because I saw this pretty-eyed girl, and she disturbed my equilibrium. And there began something that, if you had told me at 2 minutes to 9 on that Monday morning that I would ever marry a white person, I'd say you're out of your mind, you're crazy, inconceivable, impossible. It has happened.
We got married in 1963. Into all the libraries, found very little about the West Indies, and certainly like 2 lines about St. Vincent, if any. Yeah, so I knew very little, and I mean, in those days it was like going to the other side of the world.
She was a remarkable compliment to Cecil, because whenever Cecil became too passionate about the outrages of authorities, she could be the calming voice.
In England of the 1960s, mixed marriages between black and white were still a rarity, usually frowned on by both families.
My parents didn't show me that they were, had any bad feelings about it. They were very supportive, I must say. But I did have a few problems with friends. I'd lost one friend, nursing friend, because of it. But that's life, isn't it? But generally, people accepted it because they realized we were both professionals, and we knew what we wanted to do to get out of life, and we were both very happy together. We came on the geese boat and actually left England on a stretcher because I had my appendix out 48 hours before leaving England. And I mean, no one else would have allowed me to leave if a husband hadn't been a surgeon. But I left on a stretcher with a 5-week-old baby and a drip in my arm on a geese boat and had a storm for 4 days. So it was pretty horrendous. The hardest thing was the loneliness, because I didn't drive when we first came here. I had a baby, young baby, and Cecil, as you heard, left very early in the morning, 7 o'clock, worked long hours and didn't get home until 11 o'clock at night. So it was very hard.
Catherine and Cecil produced 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys, and have been blessed with many grandchildren.
He came back to St. Vincent, and for many years he was the only surgeon in St. Vincent. He had very limited facilities. He had to struggle for all the equipment that he needed. Eventually he acquired most of it himself, and he worked very much on his own. So as the only surgeon in St. Vincent, I think it was Professor Walrond who gave him the label, the isolated surgeon.
I coined the phrase isolated surgeon because I wanted Cecil in particular to show the remarkable work that someone who was working on their own could do.
The first job was at the Kingston, the old colonial hospital. I think the first operation I did was to skin graft the finger of a boy that was injured. If you walk the length and breadth of Kingston, they will tell you everybody whom I've operated on said he or she had was the first person I operated on, but it was a little boy. To be catapulted almost from the sophistication of a metropolis to the near primitive conditions here was shocking. I mean, there are so many things there was lack of equipment, there was no discipline, not enough beds, everything was wrong. But I had one of 3 choices. I could go back to Britain, I could vegetate and do simple things, or I could say to the devil with it, let me make do.
Cecil fought against the apathy of the entrenched bureaucracy on behalf of the patients, but to no avail, and he was fired in 1976. It was the best thing that could have happened to medicine in St. Vincent, as he and Catherine opened their private botanical hospital next to the famous botanical gardens. Hundreds of patients still attest to the excellent care they received there.
But the fact is that I had to survive as a surgeon, so I built my own little hospital. And my wife and I managed it for many years, and we're fulfilled in that people still came to us, and we were not out to make a fortune. We had 13 beds, and we had a laboratory, we had an X-ray department, and we had our operation theater, which is across the river. We used to charge only $58 per day for all the services, and they had the best service you could get from anywhere.
My name is Cecil Gonzalez Francis. I'm a police officer, and I've attained the rank of Assistant Superintendent of Police. Oh, it was my birthday. I went partying. On our way back home, I was told my driver thought he reached my junction, so he turned. But so unfortunate, when he turned, instead of into the road, he turned into a wall. And I was in the passengers on the front seat. And the passengers behind, they came forward as if they could struck the wall. And I went forward and I went through the dashboard, injuring my head. And as a result, I was hospitalized, and I was told that I was unconscious for 9 days. The doctor showed me the injuries that I sustained, that my head was in bandage, shine as a whistle was in my head because it shaved all the hair off my head. And this eye was down, just closed right down. So the doctor said he did a wonderful job and bring me back where I am today.
Nearly 30 years ago, Cecil was a very, very well-respected and well-liked surgeon who came to our Caribbean Health Research Council meetings, and he would give presentations on cases that he had dealt with, which were totally remarkable.
My interest in recording what I saw was the direct result of the shock it was to me to see conditions which were so gross. I had never seen these conditions abroad, and I mean, St. Vincent's population is only 108,000. I was educated where there are millions of patients, but it was the fact that I had never seen these conditions, and here I thought I should record them to share them with the rest of the profession. I never had any idea before I came here that I would start a museum, but it was almost automatic and almost inevitable that I should record these things. So shocked was I. Emerson Straker is, to me, the most important name in my medical experience, because this fact is that one Monday morning, when they were preparing the Deepwater Harbor here, I started operating at 8 o'clock. I went at 5 o'clock, I pulled up early and went to teach the nurses in the ward. And then I saw a nurse with some x-rays going away from the office. So I said, "Nurse, whose x-rays are those?" She said, "The man with the broken neck." I said, "What?" She said, "The man with the broken neck." But I said, "Nurse, I have been on duty all morning. I've been here all day operating. Why didn't you tell me about this man?" She said, "Well, nothing could be done, so I put him aside to await death as usual." So I canceled the class. I'm the world's slowest driver because I'm the world's biggest coward in the motor car. I haven't seen so much trauma. But I sped uphill, got to my house on the hill, and took the lead weights from those sash windows, read up my book. I'd only seen one patient dealt with before. And I went down back, and I took him to the operating theater, and cautiously did what I was supposed to do. And the miracle happened. Power returned within a few hours. He began to move his limbs. He had broken his neck 7 o'clock that morning, and I discovered him at 5 o'clock. Crucial how many hours that was, 10 hours. But he survived, and I think he's the most important of the work I've done here, for the simple reason that it showed the rest of my colleagues in the Caribbean that broken necks need not be fatal. A pencil in the eye is another of the how to put it, strange experiences, because this is a boy whom I had monitored for, I think, 77 or 87 days. Now I had examined him. He came with a little redness in his eye, and there was no history of his having had an accident or anything. But the eye did not clear up, and after 77 days I suspected there had to be a foreign body lodged in his orbit. Now, if it had been elsewhere that something had gone in, you'd have seen it. It would have been a scar. But because of the fact that the brain is up here, it has so much blood supply that all wounds of the head and neck heal very quickly. And when I took this boy to the operating theater in the presence of 3 other persons, Mr. Mears, whom you will meet on Saturday, a lady anesthetist, my wife, I found this piece of pencil which is still there, lodged in the orbit.
And it's that kind of commitment that I referred to earlier where Cecil has been so totally committed to the people of St. Vincent.
My name is Colville Murray. I reside in a village called Riley. I am currently employed with the National Commercial Bank. I was involved in an accident way in June, about in 1997. It was a car accident. My brother and I was traveling in the car, and the car had a brake failure. And by the time that happened, I was out of it. I lost consciousness because of the speed the car was going with after it lost the brake. I wasn't realize what was happening. We were first taken to the general hospital, where we were there for at least 2 days. But after getting to myself to know, regaining some consciousness, then I realized I woke up in the hospital bed with, my legs was in the air, and Dr. Cyrus agreed to look after us. Well, we were taken to his hospital, and there we were. From there on, Dr. Cyrus, we were met with so much great people. The nurses, they were all excellent. We felt like home. The nail that he had to put in us was placed from my hip into the bone to go straight down, so that to keep the bone together. It was there for at least 1 year. Well, Dr. Cyrus, I have to say he is a great surgeon. I really have to applaud him for the job that he did on us. At the point of our accident, I thought basically that I could not have made it to life. I already given up on life then. But coming to his hospital and the care he gave us, right, made me realize that there is hope.
The small operating room team at the Botanic Hospital, made up of surgeon Dr. Cyrus, wife Catherine as operating room nurse, and anesthetist Rudolph Mayers, operated with economic skill and efficiency on hundreds of patients.
He was doing everything: orthopedic, pediatric, ophthalmology, gynae, obstetric. Every day he was coming, and even he treat the nurses so well. I think he's a genius. We need some more doctors like him. And I don't know how he's not knighted or something like that for his work that he has done.
He may not yet have been knighted, but honors have flowed his way. Among many received, he was made a Pan American Health Organization Hero in Health and had his image engraved on a St. Vincent stamp. In 2003, he received from Queen Elizabeth the CMG, Companion of the Most Excellent Order of St. Michael and St. George, for services in the field of medicine. And in 2005, he was presented with the highest honorary doctorate, the DSc, from the University of the West Indies at Cave Hill.
Cecil is such a remarkable person as a great fitness guru who practiced what he preached. That he played a great game of squash, and he actually developed a squash career.
My name is Louise Mitchell-Joseph. I'm the daughter of Patricia Mitchell and Sir James Mitchell, and I'm from Beckway, and I'm presently living in St. Vincent. My connection with Dr. Cyrus started on August the 6th, 1970, which was the day that I was born, and he was the doctor who delivered me along with his wife Catherine. Over 30 years after that, I was there and attended the birth of my niece, Ella Mitchell-Sutton, who's the daughter of my sister Sabrina. So Sabrina, who was also delivered by Dr. Cyrus and Catherine Cyrus, she had one of her daughters, Ella, with Dr. Cyrus. So I was able to be there during her labor and during the entire delivery. So it was really remarkable. We actually have two family photographs which are part of our family history, and obviously we'd love to share them with you. One is a picture of my mother at Dr. Cyrus's clinic when I was born, holding me when I was just a few moments old. And then the other photograph we have is of over 30 years later, again with my mother and me, and this time I'm holding Ella, who is the daughter of Sabrina. Dr. Cyrus is truly a wonderful man. He said something to me once, which is something that I will always remember, and it is something that I always quote and share with other people. I was pregnant with my first child, James, and I was heading off to England, and I met him at the airport, and I went up to him and I said, I'm so sorry that you're retired, because, I would have loved for you to deliver my child. And he said to me, you realize that this is the most important thing that you ever will do. And at that time I said, okay. I was kind of self-important at the time. I had a very big job, and I didn't really understand the true depth of those words and meaning of them. And now, often when I look at my son, I see how important he is to me. I think back to what Dr. Cyrus said, because it's just so true.
The idea of documenting what he was doing went way back to his early days, from the time when he was the general surgeon at the St. Vincent General Hospital. He happened to be an excellent photographer.
I realized that this was really a unique record of pathology and the kind of work that a general surgeon in the Caribbean, and more particularly in a small island, could see, and given the enthusiasm and ability of Cecil, be able to help people.
Upon his retirement in 2001, Dr. Cyrus and his wife created the unique museum that bears his name, and they opened it to the public. Several rooms display hundreds of photographs of his most interesting cases, bottles of wet specimens, and fascinating medical and historical memorabilia.
The museum idea was mine in that I suggested that once we retired that Cecil move it upstairs, because it was beneath the clinic in a very tiny room, absolutely cramped, and we were wondering what to do with the clinic. I suggested that we move the museum upstairs and give it more space, and that's what we did.
The museum started as a fledgling museum in the Colonial Hospital, with little bottles, all sorts of things on the little shelves. And then when I was fired, I brought it up and put it beneath the floor, in the basement there, beneath the floor where you walk. There's a basement which houses all these specimens. But when we retired on the 31st of August 2001, and Catherine delighted me when she said, "Why don't you move the museum upstairs?" That was Friday, the Saturday morning. By Monday morning, the museum was on its way.
When he had the idea of retiring and converting his surgery into a museum, he had it formally opened. And so that was the occasion on which I and Professor Walwyn and others went down, and in fact the Prime Minister, Ralph Gonsalves, who had recently become Prime Minister, he declared the museum open, and there was a function. So that was when I saw the museum for the first time. There's no substitute for seeing excellent photographs and what we call wet specimens, preserved specimens.
There are 4,023 photographs. There are at least 800 morbid specimens in the bottles.
Medical museums are a traditional aspect of medical teaching and have been for centuries. There's no question that the demonstration of the abnormal has a great benefit to all medical students and all healthcare professionals. So hospitals and medical faculties, medical schools all over the world, but particularly in Europe, have developed museums in order to educate their medical students.
The museum closed in 2003. The University of the West Indies Barbados campus has launched an appeal to raise the funds to move this unique and valuable collection to Barbados, with the blessing of Dr. Cyrus and the St. Vincent government.
It's sad that it's going because, I mean, Cecil always said up to a couple of years ago that you should never leave St. Vincent. But I think it needs to be in a university setting. The more people, I mean, St. Vincent is very small and there's not enough people to see. Once they've seen it, that's it. They don't come back, you see, whereas in Barbados has people coming in and out all the time, plus the large medical school, which is where it needs to be.
The museum specimens provide a unique visual experience, a teaching tool, and this applies both to medical students and to nurses and physiotherapists and every healthcare professional to have the benefit of the abnormal to be seen in a museum.
It was comforting to be able to do things to help to preserve life, and it taught me a lesson that, you know, one has to try under every circumstance. And I have no doubt that one of my experiences, one of my therapeutic weapons was the so-called that good and kindly presence. The conventional Christian calls him God. I prefer to call him that good and kindly presence, which helped. I have no doubt in my mind that when faced with all the difficult problems, and they were difficult, I would communicate with that good and kindly presence. And I have no doubt in my mind that he helped us to have miniature miracles